During the 1800s, Americans and Indians had a wide spectrum of relations. Many white settlers loved the Native Americans and others were enemies with them. The United States recognized Indian tribes as separate nations of people entitled to their own lands that could only be obtained from them through treaties. While the treaty seemed great at the time, they fell through many times due to expansion, settlement, and commerce. The Indians reacted with outrage and violence because of the betrayal. By the mid-1800s, much of the land to the east of the Mississippi River had developed into states. President Andrew Jackson had a huge passion for advancing his country economically and geographically. He was all for westward expansion. With a great idea comes some opposition. The real conflict at the time was between the government and the Indians over the land held by the Native Americans through legal treaties. The Treaty of 1791, also known as the Treaty of Holston, recognized the Cherokees' right to a great amount of Georgia. The Cherokees were successful at adapting to a new way of life and learning how to survive. The 5 civilized tribes were the 5 Native American nations. They were known as the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, and the Seminole. They were civilized during the early colonial and federal period because of the fact that they had adopted methods and customs from the colonists and got along well with their neighbors. The Indian removal was one of the most tragic events in American history. It was a plan to push the Indians living east of the Mississippi River to new land that would be found in what is today Oklahoma. President Jackson signed the act into law in June of 1830 as he felt this offered the best hope to preserve peace and protect the Indians from being scattered and destroyed. While many obeyed the president and relocated peacefully, others resisted and fought the plan. However, the Indian removal process continued. The federal government forced them to leave their homeland and walk many miles to a specifically designated territory across the Mississippi River. This difficult and fatal journey was known as the Trail of Tears. Nearly a quarter perished on the way, with the remainder left to seek survival in a completely unknown land. Samuel Worcester, a minister from Vermont, had a mission that would send him to the Cherokee capital in Georgia. The Georgia government saw Worcester as being influential to the Cherokee Nation's resistance to the government of Georgia's plan to remove the Cherokee. Because of this, Georgia passed an act that all white people living in Georgia must acquire a state permit and swear loyalty to the state. Worcester refused to comply. In September 1831, Worcester and several others were arrested. They were tried, convicted, and sentenced to 4 years of hard labor. When Worcester appealed to the Supreme Court, Chief Justice John Marshall ruled that the Cherokee Nation was a distinct community with self-government in which the laws of Georgia can have no force. This established the idea that the national government of the United States, and not individual states, had authority in American Indian affairs. The Indian life in the 1800s was brutal and challenging, but without the movement of the Indians and the many agreements made, who knows if we would have ever expanded to the West.